Well, thanks for taking some time to talk to us. I'm excited to check out the show next month at the spot.
Yeah, we're excited to be playing in Roanoke. It's, I tell you, Tad Dickens asked us to play last year, and we were set to go out there. We lost our bass player, and so we had to cancel. And then we rescheduled the show for this year with Monster Atlantic, and we lost our bass player again. So, I told the guys in the band, I said, we're not canceling this time. So I took over the bass playing, and so we're going to do it as a three-piece.
Okay, interesting. So that'll be a little different sound from the album, I suppose.
Totally. It'll be a little more punk rock, I guess.
All right, I'm down for it. So on the album, I guess there's a almost like a speedy rockabilly sound kind of on some of the songs, maybe like a Super Suckers or something like that kind of vibe. And then on the previous album, you had the song Mississippi Delta on there. And what's that? Is there like a country kind of influence going through there, or is there a particular artist or something you're going for with that sound?
Well, I appreciate the Super Suckers comparison. Love the Super Suckers. And the rockabilly thing, not quite so sure about that, but we try to keep all the songs pretty fast and short. We try to pack some ideas, lyric ideas in there, and try to put our message across pretty quickly. The song Mississippi Delta was written by Bobby Gentry back in the mid to late 60s.
Okay.
And it was on her first album. And I'm a huge Bobby Gentry fan. I think she's a brilliant songwriter. And I love that song because of the images that it kind of puts across. And we kind of retooled it as sort of a straight ahead rocker, as opposed to hers, which was kind of a Southern funk kind of thing.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, but the original version of that is excellent. So it was on the flip side of the Ode to Billy Joe single, which was her first single. But great song, great artist.
Awesome. And you had the Velvet Underground Lou Reed cover on the most recent record. How do you choose a cover to go on your album? Because obviously most of them are originals.
Yeah, most all of them are originals. White Light, White Heat, again, a favorite of mine. And I brought it to the band. It's something we just would jam on at rehearsals. And because it's just a few chords, but again, love the lyrical imagery of it. And it's a fun song to play because it is very simple and it rocks. And we found in our live shows it went over really well. And we typically close our shows with it, but it was just one of those songs we play at rehearsals, just to have fun with, that we have a ton of those kind of songs that we play at rehearsals. We don't necessarily put them all on our records, obviously, but we do have a lot of those kind of, punk rock or garage rock or those kind of simple, short rock and roll songs that are easy to play and you could just really put a lot of energy behind them. And those are that's kind of the way we base the tunes that we choose. So White Light, White Heat, obviously Lou Reed is a genius and the Velvet Underground were amazing. So that was just kind of a natural song. And personally, in my years of playing in bands, I played that song, in 20 different bands over the past 40 years. It's just one of those songs that, is easy to play and most people know it, and so you can say White Light, White Heat and then everybody knows it and we just play it.
So I've noticed a lot of themes that are space or like quantum physics kind of related, including the name of the band, Dual Gravitons. What role does quantum theory, where does the name come from, and some of the song titles too, are they specifically related to physical or physics stuff that I would never understand? But
well, I'll tell you something about quantum physics. I don't really understand it either, but it's always kind of been an interest of mine. And the Dual Gravitons is it's a theory more than an actual thing. And I don't really pretend to understand it, but me and the guys in the dual gravitons, I mean, we're always kind of looking at science and looking at moving forward and how the world is moving forward. And there are themes of science and kind of grasping at the positive aspects of where the human race is going. And you can see that in some of the themes of the songs about science and leaving the planet and stuff like that. So but again, having said that, we do try to keep the lyrics kind of simple and keep the song short. So you're never going to see the dual gravitons go on and on and on and on about science and space travel, quantum physics.
Yeah, just a glimpse of it. I like that.
Right.
And so, did your brother Kurt help in the recording with The Speed of Boredom, the latest record?
No, he's in Seattle, so he didn't help with the recording. So you know who my brother is?
Well, I know he's in the band Fastbacks. I looked him up, and big Sub Pop Records, and then
right.
I was all. Yeah, but I don't know a ton about him. So if you want to elaborate, please.
Well, yeah. So both me and my brother, obviously, we grew up in Seattle in the 70s and early 80s, and he formed the Fastbacks, I don't know, probably in 1979. And
okay.
So that's what he had been doing. And at the same time, he was getting better as a recorder, a producer, a mixer, a master. Mastering records, and so he's done work with a lot of bands. So with the dual gravitons, we would record we recorded all three of our records in our guitar player Alex Harrison. He's got a studio in a spare room in his house, so that's where we recorded the records, and we'd ship the tunes off to Kurt, and Kurt would mix them in Seattle and put them together and then master them, and that's when we put them out.
Okay.
So Kurt helped a lot with the mixing of the records.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. I saw him listed on your Bandcamp, I think is why I asked.
Yeah.
And so you guys grew up in Seattle, you and your brother?
Yeah. I mean, I left Seattle in 1985. I moved to Los Angeles. But we grew up in Seattle in the 70s and 80s, and so we had our first band together that was called the Cheaters back in 1978, and we played at the first punk club in Seattle. It was called The Bird. Back in the late 70s, we used to play there, and so then as we got into the 80s, we got into different bands, and then I moved to Los Angeles and played in bands, and then finally made my way out to Virginia. And I lived in Roanoke for 20 years, actually.
Oh, wow.
Before I moved to Norfolk. So I've only been in Norfolk a few years, but before that I was in Roanoke for 20 years.
Oh, wow. So what brought you to Virginia from the West Coast?
Well, so I got married, and my wife and I had a daughter, and then 9/11 happened while we were in Los Angeles, and at that point we were just like, oh, we got to get out of the big city. And my wife actually grew up in Roanoke, and we actually got married in Roanoke while we were living in Los Angeles. So we just sold our house in Los Angeles and moved to Roanoke and raised our daughter. And so 20 years later, I job situation. I got laid off and found a job in Norfolk, so we moved to Norfolk.
Okay. And I was reading one of your bands, Wool, back in the 90s. They formed after Scream dissolved, and I was reading about Franz and Pete Stahl, and then of course Dave Grohl was in that band. And it seems like all of those guys also have like a Virginia or DC connection, and I was just curious how it seems like there's a lot of West Coast to Virginia or DC connections going on back then. Is that the case, or it just happened?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, my situation was a little different than Pete and Franz. So Pete and Franz grew up in Alexandria, and like Fairfax, Virginia, like right outside DC. And so Scream was a big part of the DC hardcore scene back in the 80s. And then when that situation fell apart, they actually were in Los Angeles. They were on the West Coast when their bass player left and Dave Grohl left to go join Nirvana. And so that's when I met them, when Pete and Franz were kind of stranded in Los Angeles and didn't really have anything going on. And that's when I met them, and that's when we formed Wool. And, we made a few records and toured a lot through the mid-90s. And so they're originally from Virginia, whereas I'm originally from the West Coast, and I kind of made my way to Virginia, and they're still on the West Coast. So it's kind of opposite, Now I live in Virginia, and they're on the West Coast.
It's funny how that turned out.
Yeah, it is really. But I'm still in touch with those guys. They're still my brothers.
Awesome. Was there like something in particular that was drawing so many talented musicians out to Seattle and Los Angeles during that era? Something about the city or policies or venues? What was it?
Well, in the case of Seattle, why people were going to Seattle is because of all the attention bands like Nirvana and Mudhoney and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and all those Seattle bands were getting so popular. So of course, whenever that happens with any city that has a happening scene, all the musicians want to flock there and get a piece of that action, So in the case of Seattle, because I grew up there, I was up there quite a bit, even though I lived in Los Angeles, and I would see like all these musicians coming from all over the place, just trying to soak up that kind of Seattle thing. And it kind of diluted the coolness of Seattle there for a while, I think. Once all those first wave of bands started having success. But in the case of Los Angeles, musicians are always flocking to Los Angeles just because there's more clubs, there's more record labels, there's more opportunities to have your music be heard, So that's the case with Los Angeles. And that's pretty much why I moved to Los Angeles in the mid 80s from Seattle. At that point, Seattle wasn't that happening. It was kind of dull. I was playing in a band that was kind of more of a bar band that we were playing at bars 4 or 5 nights a week. And it was fun and everything, but artistically it wasn't that satisfying. And so the band I was in, we just decided to leave Seattle, move to Los Angeles, and try to, focus more on our original material and cultivate that aspect of the band. Of course, we moved down there and promptly broke up. And then most of the guys moved back to Seattle. And then so I played in a number of bands in Los Angeles until I met up with the Wool guys, and then, played with them for 5-6 years.
Were you all touring, pretty extensively during that time?
Wool? Yeah. We put out 2 albums, and we pretty much toured most all the time. The first tours we did, Pete Stahl booked the tour on his own, so we were playing a lot of these little clubs to not many people. I think we had a 7-inch single out at that for our first tour, sleeping on a lot of people's floors that would let us stay at their houses. And then progressively, with the more touring we did, the more people would come out and see us. And then we had an album out, and that helped. And so then we got on some tours. We got on a summer tour in '93 with House of Pain, if you remember them. House of Pain and Rage Against the Machine. We did a summer tour with them, and it was pretty awesome. And then toured a lot with L7 and the Melvins, these pretty quintessential '90s bands. But did a lot of touring. Went over to Europe a few times and toured a lot over there. And then we just kind of ran out of gas, I think. The record label we were on dropped us, and so we just kind of went our separate ways. But that's the way it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I was up at Waverly Grove Studio in Stanton, Echo Hollow, and he had a poster, a box set poster, and it had the Melvins handwritten on there.
Oh, really?
Show he was at. Yeah, it's real cool. I have a photo of it. I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's funny. That's great. Yeah, the Melvins guys, God, those guys, they really helped us a lot. At Buzz from the Melvins, he actually put out our first 7-inch on his label back in '91, and that helped us a lot. And did a lot of touring with those guys. Great band.
Totally. Are you still in touch with them at all nowadays?
No, not for a while. Since once I left Los Angeles, it's kind of hard to stay in touch with a lot of those people.
Sure.
But the L7 girls, I'm kind of in touch with them every once in a while. I went and saw them play a few years ago. They're still great friends, and but yeah, it's a little harder to stay in touch when you're not kind of in the middle of things. And that whole LA thing has changed so much since the '90s, so it's kind of hard to keep up.
Absolutely. So going back to that period after you left there and you were in Roanoke for 20 years, were you still playing in bands while you were here?
No, I tried. I tried a little bit, but I could not find anybody to play with. It was really tough. I was friends with those My Radio guys. Those guys, Hunter and JC and all those guys. Do you know that band?
Yeah. They're still playing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great band and great people. But I don't know what the point I was trying to make, but I couldn't really find anybody to really play with. It was tough going. And when I had to move to Norfolk, I just kind of happened into Alex Harrison, who's our guitar player. I saw that I was friends with him on Facebook, and so I moved there right in the height of COVID, and so I really didn't know anybody. I didn't really have anything to do. I had a new job, and so I just reached out to him, and we got together and just formed the band that way, and it all worked out pretty well,
What's Alex's background?
Well, Alex Harrison and Dickie Fulcher, who is the drummer in the duo Gravitons, they're kind of Norfolk, Hampton Roads kind of music veterans. They've both been around for 20, 25 years playing in bands all across Hampton Roads and Norfolk. So I'm really lucky to be playing with guys like that they know everybody in the scene, and I didn't know anybody. So
sure.
So we got together and just started jamming on some of my tunes, and things just kind of clicked, and we, like I said, we had a couple bass players in there that kind of came and went, and hopefully we'll get another bass player at some point, but for the time being I'm playing bass. But Alex and Dickie have brought a lot of experience to the band and really helped shape it.
Excellent. Are you all still playing a lot of shows around Hampton Roads and Norfolk these days?
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, we play pretty regularly, but not a lot. Not like a lot of bands. I think it's a little tough because we don't play like two sets with a lot of cover songs that people know. I mean, we're pretty much all original with a couple of exceptions, and we keep our set pretty tight and short. Just we kind of make the set kind of a statement, not like just playing a bunch of songs for people. We want people to get an idea of the band and in the way we look and the songs we write and the sound we have. So it's a little tougher to get shows at bars and stuff when you don't kind of play the game that they want.
Right.
And so, when Tad Dickens invited us to come play with Monster Atlantic, who are a great band, especially at the spot, it was a perfect opportunity, especially to kind of debut in Roanoke.
Awesome. So this will be your first time playing the spot?
Well, yeah, actually, when I lived there, right before COVID started, I kind of helped bring a an artist to the spot on Kirk, John Wesley Harding or Wes Stace.
Okay.
Brought that show to the spot, and I actually played a few songs with him there. But it's the first time playing in a band full set there, so I'm real excited.
Do you write all of the songs that are on the album and all of the originals for Dual Gravitons?
Yeah, pretty much. I write them and bring them to the band, and then we kind of shape them to fit the Dual Gravitons. You know what I mean? I make sure when I write a song not to arrange it too much, so when I can bring it to the guys, we kind of just jam through it and kind of shape it like a block of clay, until it sounds like the Dual Gravitons.
Oh, I like that approach. And I guess you're handling all the vocals too now. I noticed there's some, harmonizing going on, but on the lead vocals.
Yeah, probably that's me on the recording. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we do have a little, Alex sings a little bit and Dickie sings a little bit, but the harmonies on the record, probably me.
And so what's next for Dual Gravitons? Are you working on new songs now? Is there anything new in the works? I know you've put out, I guess, an album the last 2 years, I think.
Yeah, we put out 3 records in the last few years, actually. And, we've got a bunch of new songs now, and we're hoping to record an album, in midsummer to have it out during the fall. And, and I guess hopefully find another bass player. But, if we can't find another bass player, I can play bass on the record. And, then we'll just, hopefully, expand the, play more around Hampton Roads, but also expand our coverage. Maybe I would love to play in Roanoke again. I hope the show goes well, and I hope we can come back and play in Roanoke and maybe play some places in between, like, Richmond or Harrisonburg and maybe up in D.C. So that's kind of the plan for this year, is kind of expand a little bit, put out a new album and just keep things moving.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. What makes you prefer the 2 guitar sound? Do you just prefer playing guitar to bass?
Well, I write all the songs on guitar. And so the kind of interplay between me and Alex is I have if you hear on the record, it's more of a chunky, almost like AC/DC kind of sounding guitar. And Alex, his sound is kind of like icing on top of that. He kind of has different parts on top of it. So I prefer the 2 guitar attack just because it's such a with my guitar and the bass and the drums, it's just kind of a real thick rockin' sound with Alex kind of on top of it. So when we lose my guitar and I'm playing bass, and bass is kind of my first instrument anyway, which is fine. It just kind of changes the sound. And so when we lost our bass player, and with this Roanoke show in mind, we kind of had to go through our tunes, go through the set we had, and just kind of figure out the tunes that worked better with one guitar and ones that didn't. We kind of moved things around. So that is, I like playing guitar, and it's easier for me to play guitar and sing than it is for me to play bass and sing for these songs, because I wrote them on guitar. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that, but I do love playing bass.
Good deal. Well, that sounds like it's going to be a fun show, and maybe a one-off if you do end up getting another bass player here soon.
Right. You never know what's going to happen with the Dual Gravitons. Just when we think we have some plans, things change, and we have to kind of pivot. So.
Well, absolutely. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Oh, and before I let you go, I'm almost done with stuff. I am interested about the old Iroquois Club in Roanoke. Did you ever play that while you were around? It might have been.
No, in all the bands I've been with and toured, I never played the Iroquois. It's funny. I never played in Roanoke. The closest I got was Richmond, Richmond and D.C., of course, but never played at the Iroquois. I've heard so many stories about it since I moved there. I heard so many stories, but Never had the pleasure of playing that place.
All right. Well, had to ask you, but I thought you might have. Interesting that you haven't played that much in Roanoke despite living here for so long. I think that's cool that you're making a return in April.
Yeah, I'm trying to make up for the lost time.
Awesome. Well, Al, I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to. I'll come say hi when I am there in April at the spot.
Okay, cool, Jason. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.